Hi, everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, I wanted to give a couple comments on this Mercury retrograde in Leo. Now, Mercury is the function of the mind to connect the dots of reality. It is always informing the sun. It's reflecting back the sun, right? Our sense of ego and identity and centrality in life. And so our Mercury sign is always really important. It's almost like the satellite of the mind that is bringing in the information necessary to bolster the light of our identity or our ego. So it's not the beliefs we carry, but it's the way we see the world and how that way we see the world informs who we know ourselves to be, which is the sun. So Mercury in Leo is very interesting because Leo is ruled by the sun. And so Mercury in this case is almost representative of a mind reflecting on itself, a mind reflecting on its own ego or its own identity, its own purpose. Those are the significations of the sun as well as Leo. And so when this happens, there can be a lot of self-consciousness. In a really healthy sense, this can be the focus on our own identity, on our own purpose, on what inspires us. But on a more negative end, it can be an overthinking about ourselves, our identity, and our purpose. And I want to speak deeply to the Leo archetype today because Leo is actually very, very prominent in my chart. And Leo is the sign traditionally of kings and people with power, and the sun being this sort of all-seeing eye, this very, charismatic and big figure, right, is what Leo can be. But Leo is also the sign of the child and of the inner child, of the inner light that is waking up in us every single day, just as the sun is waking up every single day. And one of the challenges in Leo is that because it's a fixed sign, there is a fixity to the creative and fiery spirit of it. And what that means is that there can be a very fixed sense of this is who I am, and this is what I'm doing, and this is where I'm going. And it can actually then become this need to be king, or this need to be competitive, or this need to be, seen or creative all the time. And that is where I think we can run into issues with Leo versus when we're in the child state of Leo. We know that that light can never leave. We know that there is a fixed fire within us that can never go, that we don't have to catch it or we don't have to make it happen, but rather that fixed fire is always flowing through us. All we have to do is wake up and meet it. All we have to do is wake up and see it. And so in Leo, there is this very important lesson that our creative purpose isn't something we make, but rather something we let in. It's not something we force, it's not something we fix, it's something that we simply have to be available to through the heart, right? Leo rules the heart. And so when we have Mercury in Leo, it's learning to use our minds to reflect back our hearts, right? Leo, you can think of, or the sun, as sort of our ultimate creative purpose. And in the Western thinking world, that is most of the time up in our heads, right? It's, well, what do you want? It's, what do you want to manifest? What do you want to create? And Leo teaches us that the real creative purpose we bear is actually in the heart, is actually in the joy and the love that we feel. And so Mercury in Leo can very easily be our mind being up here, right? Being up in the what am I doing? What's my purpose? What's my identity? Who are my people and who is watching me and who's looking at me? Or it can be this deep, deep, deep reflection of our heart, which is how much am I seeing myself as, an expression of this solar energy, as an expression, as an emanation of the solar power that is in the sky and that is in all of us. So, being a Mercury retrograde, retrogrades, there's always things up for review. And so here, I think, is really a chance to review how much of our thinking reflects a, let's just call this productive creative purpose, right? Where is my mind focused on producing and making happen and being in the, in the driver's seat at all times? How can I adjust my thinking to simply hold space for the creative purpose inborn through my heart to simply flow through, right? So one other thing I'll say to this is we may be going through with the Leo Mercury retrograde sort of a sense of seeing, or I guess this is more an elaboration of what I was saying, but sort of, yeah, seeing where we aren't necessarily guided by the heart and more where we're guided by the expectations of society, by the expectations of ourselves, by our own mind saying, this is how it has to be and this is how it has to work, rather than just being open to the play, to the joy, to the love that gets to come through us. So some prompts for the Leo retrograde or the Leo Mercury retrograde, is where do I feel the strongest in my head? Where is my head wanting to go? Where do I feel the strongest in my heart? What is my heart trying to say? And how can I bring the two together? Because another integral part of the Leo archetype is it's learning to use the strong-willed mind with an even stronger, bigger heart. It's learning to make the two work together. So we can't lose that need to, right? Fixed signs are all about completing something or seriously making something physically real in the world. So that desire to accomplish or to finish or to push through to the end is very, very powerful. But if it's coupled with a lack of heart, with a lack of play, with a lack of joy, we can turn very tyrannical. We can turn very controlling into kind of a cruel king of our own lives, right? So that's why it's like we need that ambition, or I don't want to call it ambition, but we need that fiery fixed impulse to carry forth joy and play and truth. Another thing about the Leo archetype is the sun joys in the ninth house, and I always love this about Leo because the sun joining in the ninth house means that the ninth house being the place of higher wisdom and truth and justice and finding sort of a connection to a higher power. There's this real sense in Leo that we get of also truth and justice. So it's also like, am I doing this for the truth, for justice? Am I doing this to unlock more hearts everywhere, to get all of our hearts, into the same zone where we're being fueled and inspired by the sun and carrying something really beautiful, really courageously and really hugely forward. Leo wants to have an impact. Leo wants to, finish something, complete something, show something. But Mercury, right, our mind, it's like, where are we putting the focus? And how can we attune our minds to, our hearts first? How can we lead from that place? How can we move forward with the heart sort of as or the sun literally as the guidepost, as the joy, as the light, as the love, while still keeping in us a very strong impulse towards all we want to complete and finish and do. So it's this balance, right, between sort of yeah, the expectations we have of ourselves and the true self. How do we merge those? How do we find those? So Mercury and Leo will be begging this question. So I hope this video helps or gives you just a little bit of a affirmation or a little bit of a, pick in your, a little pep in your step as you go through this Mercury retrograde Leo. So I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening.